Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. I'm your host, Chris King. I'm a shamanic healer, creator of Ascended Astrology and the Medicine Alchemist, and a line called Microdose, which is a line of high performance microdosing blends. I'm also a business coach and mentor, and I'm so happy to welcome another fellow business mentor and manifester. Angharad Sage. She is a seven-figure business coach, a human design expert, and is known as your Galactic Guide. She teaches business owners like myself, she was a business coach of mine as well, how to be seen and paid without performing. And Herod is a splenic 2-4 manifester, and I'm a 2-4 ego manifester. So we have a lot of activations we're going to bring for you today. And she has Capricorn Sun and Rising in the FM or tropical false matrix chart. So get ready for this conversation. It's going to be very activating, and it's going to push you into a new timeline, into a new frequency. And she also bridges the gap between your codex and your earthly results. I love that. When she's not pursuing business endeavors, you'll find her in her kitchen baking delicious sourdough goods, which I see on social media and they look incredible. And she rides dirt bikes with her teenage sweetheart. I'm not jealous at all. Learning to renovate houses and homeschooling her children in rural New Zealand. Her favorite place to get to hang out is on social media on Instagram, and you can find her with her handle at Angharad Sage, and that's spelled Angharadsage. And Herod, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I'm excited for our activations, that's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to go in, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience, but I want to go into so many different conversations with you because our times together have been so activating. And many of you on this who have listened to this podcast, been in many of my classes, who are in my I Am the Medicine program, in mentorship with me, you will hear the famous story of 2022 when when Spirit told me at the beginning of 2022, which was me about to enter my eighth house year, and Herod had just entered her eighth house year because we're about 6 months apart. And Spirit said to me, prepare to lose it all. And I decided to move into a retreat center at the end of 2022, which was incredible. What a level up. But just before that retreat center came in, I got a booking with Angharad. She booked with me and didn't tell me who she was. And which was masterful of her. And I was able to just read her fully without knowing any preconceived notions. And she said something to me that changed my life. And she said, I can't believe how inexpensive your sessions are. And that struck me, and like it was like a knife going into my stomach because I knew that already. But I was so deeply afraid of charging more because I'm a spiritual practitioner, I'm a medium, I'm a shamanic healer, and I don't want people to think that I only care about money and that I'm not accessible, and blah, 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 all this stuff came up in that one moment. So then I said, well, you know what? I want to work with you. And so she said, well, here's the link right here. You can pay in full right here. And so I paid in full, and it was the most I had ever paid for a session before. And I remember later that year going into debt and not being able to afford food. This only lasted for a couple weeks. And then I was like, Spirit, is this you saying, prepare to lose it all? Because this is ridiculous. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, why did I pay her that? Why did I buy this retreat center? Why did I do all this? And then shortly after, I started making more money than I ever made in my entire life. And it's only gone up from there. So, Angharad, I want you to talk about your whole process. Take us back into your life. Take us back into your lineage here. Take us into anything that you want us to know to give us a foundation about yourself and how you came into your power as a manifester, as a galactic guide, as an initiator of someone else who's an initiator like myself. Let's go back.
Lovely. So I think some of my youngest, most grounded memories is actually playing with the fairies in Australia. So I was born here in New Zealand, but we moved to Australia for a few years around the time I started school. So around 5 years old and 4 or 5 years old. And I used to spend so much time with the fairies and with the pixies, literally with tree stumps in the colder parts because it's bloody hot in Australia. If you didn't know, everyone knows that, don't they? And my father was still alive at the time, and I suspect he too was also a manifester. He was also a healer and my guide, and helped me understand what I was experiencing as a child. And I remember being on the back of a motorbike with him shutting in the cows one evening after milking. And I was explaining to him how I see the spiritual world. And I remember saying, or him helping me formulate the words, that everything that I was experiencing was stacked up on top of this 3D world, but nobody else could see it, or nobody else was experiencing it. It's kind of similar to how we see a hologram, I guess, except it's more vivid and more real and more interactive. And that really helped me. He really helped me understand who I was and what my gifts were. And he passed away when I was 7 years old from a brain cancer. And that led me into about 20 years of deep depression and struggle with trying to understand how and why my spiritual gifts landed in this world when I just had to be so serious all of a sudden at 7 years old. I was the oldest of five children, and like my youngest sibling was 6 months old. I took on a mother role at 7 years old.
Mm.
And it was a very different life than what I had been living, playing with the pixies and fairies and having spaciousness and just having these kind of like deeper conversations as to what life was. And so I turned to religion for a little while, Christianity, which really did serve me kind of get my first filter system on some of my gifts. And that really helped me for about a decade. I met my husband while I was in that period of life, and we're still married now. Our relationship has completely changed and like morphed and grown over the years, and it's really beautiful and stunning, honestly. So I think it's 17 years now we've been together, and I had
Wow.
children. And my children, birthing my children and being pregnant was actually the portal back to myself through my creation portal, through my womb space, which
Hmm.
came through in the beginning. We were talking about this before
Yeah.
you picked up on that. And also just the power and the sovereignty that I had, because this body created these babes, and this body birthed them so effortlessly. Like my labors and the labor and birth are my favorite experiences ever on this earth. They were incredible and like the most powerful, exhilarating, like sovereign moments of my life.
Mm.
And that initiated me into, after feeling that sovereignty, I had the gap of it in motherhood and in the life that I was living. And that's the duality and the spaciousness and the gut wrenching breath is what made me realize that things needed to shift for me, that I needed to reclaim my sovereignty, but I knew nothing. I would not have worded any of it like this. I now, in reflection, understand that. But the journey that I went on was completely intuitive and completely against everything that was available to me and was encouraged of me in this extremely religious life that I was living.
Mm.
And so there was a lot of chains that were broken, a lot of reclamation for my sovereignty, and a lot of just deep understanding and acceptance of the healing path that I needed to go on, the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows, right? And the experience in this human form in order for me to be the leader that I am now and the impact that I do have now.
Yeah. Wow. That's so beautiful. And I know some of the mothers listening are jealous of how exhilarating your birth experiences are, or how you are able now to look at it. Because a lot of the female energies around me and the women I've grown up with in my life are always complaining about their periods and their bodies and, children and birth and how hard it is to be a woman. And I can just feel the groundedness that has come in, and just the recognition of the beauty in that has embodied within you and been reclaimed within you. And it's really beautiful. And of course, you know, Spirit right now is showing me the Pentacle cards in the tarot deck. And they're saying, the Pentacle cards are the earth cards. They represent the earth. So, and you've got such a strong, we both have, I have a Capricorn stellium in my chart as well. It's not in my sun or rising like yours. My rising sign is Cancer, opposite of yours. So we have this karmic sort of mirroring, or this tethering that we have with each other when we gather in each other's energy field.
Mhm.
And the pentacle cards also represent money. So it's like the more grounded you get, the more embodied you get, like a tree. I mean, it's like I'm on a shamanic journey right now. They're showing me how
Mhm.
it's like the money is made from the trees and the gold is made from the earth, and that it's all meant for us to reclaim and hold and uh, really tap into. And that's something that you helped me tap into, was a deeper level of self-worth, that I was afraid to step into because I was still, I had only been out on my own doing this full time for about a year when you came into my life. And so I was still trying to make sure I didn't piss people off. I was still trying to make sure I didn't, you know, become homeless like I had been before in my life. There was a lot of fears that stepping into this brought up on an energetic and just a false matrix dense level that you helped crack open. And I can see how your experience really brought you into that. And so I want you to go more into being a mother and being a woman and being a feminine creature. And, before we got on this call, or as we were talking before we pressed record, I kept hearing masculine wounding and masculine programming. And I do feel like your dad had something to do with that because of his sudden and early departure. But also, your chart is masculine coded as much as it is feminine coded too. Both of us have very much a beautiful blend of both. But take me into, being a woman, being a mother, and how that has shown up in your spiritual life, but also in your mentorship work.
Mm. With the masculine and the feminine, also to speak of human design, a manifestor's energy type is more of a masculine energy type. It is a masculine energy type because it is initiating, it is forward focus, it is, the first domino, right? It is the cause and effect of everything that happens in the world. And so, you know, and there was I think for me, there was a lot of masculine programming out of survival in my childhood. My mother is a very strong woman, like the strongest fucking woman, but she is also so caring. Like she will drop anything at a moment's notice to help anyone. Like the most deepest, nurturing, caring mother. And in my childhood, there was no space to be feminine. There was space to feel our emotions. She did hold that for us and did model that for us and did cry in front of us, despite, her mother asking why she cries in front of us. She was like, how do you, yeah, like there was a lot of, because she's Welsh, which is the reason why I have a Welsh
Oh,
name. And the women and in my lineage, especially the Welsh ones, were very repressed and very
yes.
controlled and very not honored. Like my nine, which is my Welsh for grandmother, so my mother's mother, lost a baby at full term and it was never acknowledged. She never had space to heal or to grieve. Her stepfather was shot in the house that they were living in by a worker. She was never allowed any, and she, in the probably 70s, ended up in one of the nut houses, as they would
Right.
call it back then. There
Yeah.
was
Right.
a lot of shame about women needing to process something they needed to process. And so while my mother was an incredible guide and honestly did so incredibly, there was a lot for me to also be initiated into in my lifetime, for especially for my daughter, my children, and for myself, obviously. And that journey was painful as fuck. It was not simple. But one of the reasons why there has been a lot of pain, and I think one of the things that cause a lot of pain for people is not knowing how it could go, is not having role models where you can be, for instance, in my instance, I didn't know any millionaire mothers who cooked food from scratch, who homeschooled their children, who loved their husband,
Right.
who renovated houses, who spent time, who had really good family relationships,
Yeah.
who wasn't full of themselves, who was still humble, who
Right.
who displayed luxury in a different kind of way other than fucking bags. Like
Totally.
I didn't have an understanding of how it could precipitate, and that caused a lot of pain for me, because in that journey what we end up doing is we try on different things for size. We try buying the bags, or farming out our children to school, or
Totally.
not being in our feminine energy, or hiring 300 team members, or working with the specific working with a specific coach, or
Yeah.
becoming really hard, or like there's a million that, or pushing our partners away, or like there's a
Yeah.
million things that we try. And wisdom actually comes from us in human design soaking where we are not defined in our chart. So the centers that are
And
white,
this is for
we are,
everyone you're talking about.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. We are absorbing energy from other people like a sponge. But our job and the function of a sponge, how it cleans a bench, is it absorbs and then it releases.
Mm.
It absorbs and then it releases. And wisdom really, therefore, is trying on shit for size and realizing it was aligned for us for that season.
That's right.
Whether that season was 5 seconds and we went, fuck no, or whether that was 5 years and go, cool, that. And it does not have to be any longer. Because
Yeah.
while we are still wrapped up in the story and judging ourselves and being like, that was so bad. Like there was a time where I looked back at my cult era, right? Where I was in a cult and go, oh, fuck that, fuck them. That really hurt me. That really
Right.
impacted me. That caused me so much trauma. They're wrong. They're wrong. I was right. I was abused, all this kind of stuff. While that is that journey, and that individual perspective is actually required because it catapults us to create separation between where we were and where we're going. And that void and that separation, that ripping apart, is the ego being like, actually, that fucking hurt. That was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
That was really traumatizing to me. But then on the journey, the thing that I also hadn't been modeled, another piece, is that softens, and you're able to look back and reclaim all the versions of us and actually accept and love all of the journey that we've been on, because the essence of wisdom is not reading something and then going, oh, I'm not going to do that. Wisdom is actually a lived experience.
Yeah.
It's actually the learning and the unlearning, the soaking and the releasing,
Yeah.
the trauma and the healing. And that's actually what gives us depth. That's what gives us relatability. That's what gives us like a heart-centered like being.
Yeah.
And so that's been very pivotal to me. And also I think that's where a lot of, and everyone will have their own version, but I think that's where a lot of the pain comes from. It's not actually um, having a precipitation, a role model or role models of how something could look, despite there being like rules, because this world is full of, it is only rules. It
Right.
is bound by yes and no, black or white. You know, it's binary, one or two, like it's zeros or ones. It is binary. And
False matrix.
that's right. And there is another layer, just like my inner child saw and experienced. While we are on this earth, and while it is binary, and while it is yes or no, or black or white, or masculine or feminine, like it's just yes, that is true. And that is not the only thing we get to experience. That is not the only part of us. And so anytime that I'm smacked in the face of a binary wall that feels like there is an edge past it, an evolution through it, but there is no way that I can see on my wisdom or any role model. That for me, what I have learned as a human is that wall where it seems like it's so caged is actually an invitation and an initiation into who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because who you are exists past the binary wall that you can't see behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is bringing me back to different stages in my business of, because I didn't come from money. I didn't, my parents I mean, my dad has implanted so, or tried to implant so many programs into me around money and survival, and it worked up to a certain point until I started choosing away from it. But it was difficult. It was like, you know, ungluing yourself from something you're super glued to. Okay. It was like I saw myself off of some of these programs and false matrix constructs, and or even just capitalistic constructs and that sort of thing. And when you bring up, trying on different things, and that being an authentic part of us as humans, but definitely those of us with an undefined G center and manifestors, and which I'm both. So there's like at the beginning of last year, I completely rebranded my business because I had a business coach and decided I'm going to take my business to the next level, and I'm ready to step into that six figure. I had already crossed that six figure point, which pissed a lot of people off. Okay. A lot of my clients who, I love you so much, but don't get a big head. I love you so much, but I guess I'm not for you anymore. I had clients bow out of experiences with me, or not communicate with me anymore. And I have heard from them since, and they said, well, I felt like there was no place for me. And I said, that was a choice you made. Okay. Because I had become very clear. And also, I do look back, and my branding and my photos and everything that I did, I love it. I don't take it back, but I definitely was trying to match the prices that I was now charging. I was trying to look like what I felt someone would need me to look like, but actually, I had to walk through that portal. Now I don't give a shit, but there's going to be a version of me in a year that looks back at this and goes, now I don't give a shit. So I surrender to the constant unfolding of this shamanic journey that we call life. And something, you really helped me just now kind of reclaim that idea of, I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't like I was not in my authenticity. It was that, like when I bought the brand new Ford Bronco, which I still have and I love it, but I remember being like, okay, now what? You know, that I tried that. I tried I'm going to get the expensive thing because now I have the money to do so. Ooh, and realizing I don't give a shit about that. And then going into this spiral around, well, does that mean I don't love money? And is that why I can't bring more money in? Is that going to be a code? Like, do I have to care about the physical things to bring in the money to match it? And what all that means? And there's so many different layers to that process that many spiritual practitioners aren't even going to touch because they don't want to piss people off. They've already got witch wounds and they don't want to be a villain. And I have been villainized many times for raising prices, charging a certain amount, people sending insanely horrifying messages to me. And I know you have this experience as well. But before we go into, and that's a conversation for two manifestors to definitely have, is the idea of being the Wicked Witch of the West, or Maleficent, or Cruella. Okay. And, Wicked has been my favorite since I was 14. I went to a performing arts high school, and when Wicked came out on Broadway, and then when the movie came out, it was just like this remembering of my inner child, because I would dress up as the Wicked Witch of the West as a small child every year for Halloween, and how this like story unfolded in my life of being this wicked witch that actually now gets her own movie that's even better than the original story and even more cool. So we get to reclaim that, but it is not easy. And especially because when I post this episode, I know some people listening right now are going to be like, okay, here they go. They're going to be talking about money, the spiritual people in the money, or people only care about money. And I just want to bring this up, a um, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw this post, and it said um, holistic practitioners, six-figure hypnosis and healing practice. And I was like, usually something like that years ago I would have been like, ugh, look at her, she only cares about money. I didn't feel that, so I decided to click on it, but I accidentally went down to the comments, and someone wrote this, and I'm just going to say this out loud. This is exactly the kind of messaging that makes my eyes roll. Spiritual work, or any heart centered work for that matter, should never be reduced to a formula for cashing in. If your sole focus is on money rather than genuine service, then you're not building a business, you're building a scam. When we center our work around what we can give rather than how much we can take, the money part tends to align naturally. But chasing dollars without heart, that's just manipulation dressed up in fancy words, and it's exhausting to watch, let alone participate in. So I went to this person's profile who is a psychic medium and has their own website, and the website looked not up to code. Okay. And also, I don't, from the response they gave me to the comment that I put, which was very loving, very nice, they have never made more than six figures in their life. And that's not a judgment of mine, but I did say in my comment, if you are not already a six or seven figure business coach or someone who runs ads or a business mentor doing the kind of work that she's doing, you really don't have a say in the matter here. Okay. So there were so many distortions in a comment like that from another spiritual person. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel this responsibility not to stop it, but to at least give a little perspective, which I did, which I hardly ever do. And it was about, and it's a free training she's offering. You know, there were so many different distortions around what was coming through. And I just remember thinking, how are we going to stop this? Because you know what is so false matrixy is the fact that they have spiritual people turned against spiritual people. We've got light workers and star seeds turned against each other because we're judging the way that we heal people, trigger people. It's like we were talking about before we got on this podcast, the Heyoka in the Lakota Native American tribes. The Heyoka is a type of super empath that mirrors back your shadows and your internal struggles to you through their kind of wild, erratic, unconventional behavior. And it's like a sacred clown archetype, or it's a shaman archetype, and it's a very revered aspect of, I'm getting chills right now, of the Native American tribe. And a Heyoka is also meant to act in really unconventional ways and even taboo ways to get the evolution of the tribe to continue and to disrupt the norm. And so there's so much beauty in being a manifester, being someone who comes in and says, okay, there is dark energy around the money. There's satanic, satanic, Illuminati symbols all over the US dollars. There are spiritual beings and coaches who are only doing this for the money because they're in survival, not because they're evil or they're mind controlled too. But I'm going to choose to go into that space and even get the tomatoes, like how you throw tomatoes and stuff at somebody who didn't do a good job on stage. I'm going to take one for the team as well and go into this space where this is going to trigger people, because at the end of the day, you light workers, star seeds out there, how are you going to fully tap out of the false matrix if you don't master it first? And money is one of those things. Worth, feeling worthy is one of those things. Wealth should be for all. So if it should be for all, has to start doing that. Someone has to start claiming that for themselves. So take us into your journey from, hey, we had cows and I played with fairies and I had a lot of trauma and I had a pretty rural and humble upbringing, and I come from really humble people. I come from Welsh and Irish people as well, and Native Americans who lived on the land and did not have mansions, and sometimes starved and starved to death even in my family line. So take us from that person being a mother, being a wife, being an adult, and then stepping into this new codex and this new paradigm of being a millionaire, and not being a millionaire because you sold a course on how to build a course, but being a millionaire because you did sessions and mentorships and sold courses on how to tap into your manifestor nature, how to tap into the spirit of the money and the business that you're in. You were a spiritual practitioner that broke through that seven-figure barrier. And I want you to take us through that whole journey.
Yeah. So I've always been an entrepreneur. So even in honestly, my teenage years, I always saw like, why doesn't someone start this business? Why doesn't someone sell this? Why doesn't someone do, like, how do we I
Very
always
Capricorn
had,
of you.
yeah, I just always had this intuition, I guess, and this clear direction around earthly things like money. Like
Yep.
it just seemed to me, and my parents didn't judge money either. Like they didn't really judge really rich people. My father's family was from gentry, like a few generations back.
Mhm.
Like his grandfather grew up like a personal butler and stuff, and that changed through the generations and stuff.
I sort
um
of know the answer to this, but my parents very much judge money, and my dad, if somebody in a Mercedes didn't use their turn signal, he would say rich people can't drive. I mean, just
yeah.
little things like that, little microaggressions since I was a
Mm.
child around money. Do you think, and again, I'm pretty much know the answer to this, but I want to talk about it. The fact that you did not have that programming or that example of shaming the money may have given you a little bit of a, not a leg up that I couldn't claim for myself, but just
Mm.
a barrier that I have to move through that you didn't have to move through.
Yeah,
Because
one
I
less
want to give the
barrier.
listener some
Yeah,
context here.
which is the reason why I bring it up is because, like, um because there's a wall. The wall is what the world or what our parents showed us, right? The wall that's impenetrable, which is money is bad. Rich people are can't, like, just a whole,
Money is
like,
the
rich
root
people
of
are
all evil.
horrible. Exact, literally. And so, but that's a wall, but that's not the only expression in this lifetime. That's not the only thing. Just like the fairies and the, like, this 3D world, I saw the fairies on top of it. And so I was really, like, my parents didn't really use that language. They really struggled. They were entrepreneurs and they worked really hard for opportunities that they created. And so I took all of, like, because, but those were my strengths that I had in my childhood. But, like, everyone will have their little ball of strengths, right? No matter what it is, they will have their little ball of strengths, like whether their mother was really ambitious, whether their father was really grounded, whether they had a really beautiful family home, whether they had one sibling who went off and studied and made a whole lot of money and was like, actually, why don't we all, do you know what I mean? There are little nuggets, because we are all set up for success. Like, we are given nuggets from our higher self and from our timelines. But anyway, so that was one of mine. And while I still received a lot of conditioning from the world around money, right? Like, everyone talks about it, everyone makes comments about it. And so I still was impacted by that narrative. But I remember as because I also, the beginning of my career was in accounting and office administration. I started as an office junior and worked my way up. And the company that I worked with, my first company, they were quite wealthy. They worked their asses off, but they were quite wealthy, and the way that they showed their wealth was very different than I'd ever witnessed.
Yeah.
And I did their accounting, obviously, and saw how much they spent on a dress. And I was like, what? Like, it was a car value. I was like, I remember being absolutely dumbfounded. Anyway, and so the other thing that I really pulled on was my one of the stories, all of the stories, probably really from the Bible, with Jesus, how he used to hang out with the unclean people, right? The prostitutes, the, I don't know, the lepers, like, all, these people. He never saw himself more than. And for me, like, the times where I would read those stories, there was a really deep activation within me. And the message that I received, the deeper layers that I received from those stories is, and actually the literal thing that the Bible says, or at least Christians say, is to be in the world but not of it.
Hmm.
That was said a million times. And I have an undefined head center, undefined ajna, and I take things pretty fucking literally. Like, when someone says to me, when a spiritual guide at the time, right, Christian, says, be in the world but not of it, I was like, oh, well, of course I could make money then, but it's about what I'm doing with it, right? It's about whether I'm helping people, about how grounded I am, about whether I'm still a good person or whether I turn into a dickhead, you know?
Totally.
And so, like, when it came to I just I it's like the matrix. Like, I see all these things coming towards me and understanding, all of these frequencies, and I just have a uncanny way, honestly, of feeding through the bullshit to find the nuggets, like the golden strings to pull on to create. And one of the golden strings that I pulled on when I was 20 was being a business owner. after being in office administration and then accountant, just studying some accounting and stuff, I was like, in the tax system in New Zealand, you guys are a little bit different. So from what I understand from the American system, when you guys do your own financial returns, right? At the end of the year, you can claim a portion of your cell phone. You can do that just as a normal person, right? In New Zealand, you can't do that. If you are paid by somebody, you don't get to claim any of your expenses again, you don't get to offset anything against your
Wow.
tax. So
Wow.
our tax rate is roughly between 23 and 33% is our personal tax rate here in New Zealand. It's bracketed. The first 17,000 is less, but whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
That's where the majority of it sits, and we don't get to offset any of it. But when you're a business owner, you get to offset 25% of your house mortgage, 25% of your cell phone, 25% of your internet, 25% of your fuel, all this 25% of the value of your vehicle. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna start a business.
Right.
So I started a fucking business.
Yeah.
And from since I was 21, I started a business and it's been well over a decade now that I haven't worked, quote unquote, worked for someone, right? And
Yeah.
taken wages as per se, because I saw the golden thread, waded through all the bullshit, all the limitations and all the things people say and all the things people complain about. And I looked for the golden nugget and pulled on that thread. And I was like, okay, so that's one. So I had the thread of um you know, you can be in the world but not of it. That money doesn't have to be evil. Really, it's about what you're fucking doing with it, right?
Yeah,
And who you
we're
are as a person.
manifestors in human design. We're cosmic, galactic. I mean, we've been shamans and witches and mothers and healers
Yeah.
and priestesses. We've been all kinds of things on this planet. We've died. We've gone through so many initiations, so many upgrades spiritually. We
Mm,
come from so many places in the galaxy. And you're telling
mm,
me that just because the Alpha Draconian reptilians, the Archontic forces, the global elite have created this system of money which is designed to keep us on a hamster wheel, that I can't play on that hamster wheel,
mm,
that I can't find pleasure on that hamster wheel in some way, which
mm,
may actually inadvertently fling me off of that hamster wheel. Instead of
mm,
running against it, I run with it, or I
mm,
master, or I
mm.
take the game that they created the rules for and I create my own rules for it. How come it can't be that way?
Like that's literally what I think Jesus did. Like
I
honestly,
agree. I
the
just
stories.
did, I'm building a course right now, and I was going through the different shamanic archetypes, and I brought up Yeshua, and this was earlier today, and I said, Yeshua went down and sat with the prostitutes and sat
Yeah.
with so when you brought that up, I was like, oh my gosh, Yeshua, he has to be making his presence known in this conversation, because talk about programming, Buddha, Yeshua, these are the people we look to with such
Mm,
high esteem, and they didn't care about money. Buddha begged
mm,
at the door, and I'm like, they did not live during this modern time. They did not live beyond 2012. This is a
mm,
completely different dimensional ball game that we're in.
mm,
So we have to play the game differently.
mm. I also think there's a lot of distortion between Jesus or Yeshua's frequency and what he partied with the prostitutes and what men have said over the years about it, the
Yeah,
story they have made it mean, right?
totally.
And like for me, like I just so clearly see through the bullshit. I just do. Like I just one of my gifts. I see all of it. It's not that I don't see the bullshit, it's that I see it, but my authority is so fucking strong. And I'm like, oh, while I absorb it, I also then release it, and it doesn't have to be my story.
Right.
And so, like, because remember, there's always a story, and there's what someone else has made it mean.
Ooh, yes.
And I think, like, with the money and buying the truck, I think it's a truck that you bought. Is that what it is? What you bought?
It's a Bronco, yeah.
So it's a truck. Okay, yeah. And it's like maybe that's the reason why rich people say money can't buy happiness, and why everyone else is pissed off about that,
Yeah.
because you don't know until you've been through it.
That's right.
And so while everyone is grappling and projecting and trying to understand all this sort of shit and commenting on stuff online and all this and sending feedback, and clients everyone has their own experience in this world, no one should have more sovereignty over your perspective than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the world and your higher self will continually put us in places until we learn that lesson.
Yes.
And so,
Receiving that fully.
yeah. And so, really, the journey of being a human and being a wealthy spiritual human, a wealthy spiritual leader, is about not being affected by other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
It's about being so sovereign and so confident within your own self and so self validated that when somebody else spits out their perspective or their triggers or their trauma or just feedback, even if
Yeah.
it's not negative, whatever, if it is impacting you and triggering you, that is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And it is highlighting areas where you are not yet sovereign,
Hmm.
where we have not yet reclaimed, where we have not yet elevated or de-elevated, right? Grounded into the version of us that actually fully, lovingly, unconditionally loves and accepts ourselves as a leader who makes money.
Yeah, and I want to speak to the listener's perspective right now. The people who may still be working a 3D job, if you want to put it that way, 9 to 5, however you want to put that, receiving a paycheck, who may be triggered by this conversation already. And these two people in their spiritual businesses and their, I was one of these people with this perspective back in the day. In many different ways. I would go to a medium and expect them to be full of shit. Okay, and then I
Mm,
became a medium. So it
mm,
was like I've had so many judgments that I eventually became that which I judged before. And
yeah.
I noticed that as manifestors, we got to be careful of that, because
Mm,
that's usually the thing that we're going to embody or become, or these different masks that aren't a lack of authenticity, but are an aspect of our total self that we need to accentuate or really embody by going, um, not going overboard, but fully diving in head first into it and becoming it and then realizing I need to shed that now. That's all part of this beautiful journey that we're on. But if I speak to the perspective, many of us are, we don't trust ourselves because of perfectionism and
mm,
because we look back at our life, like there have been a couple times this year that I looked back at last year with my branding and my website at the time and thought, well, I already tapped out of that. I already moved beyond that. How can I trust that what I'm doing right now isn't something that I'm just going to realize that I need to move beyond? And so
mm,
there's this ego trip around wanting to be right or wanting to get to the destination already or wanting already to have it figured out. Just tell me where the blocks are when actually
mm,
your higher self is leading you there through these different blocks. Like it's okay that you charge this amount and now you charge this amount, which is less, but it isn't because but you're making more money from it, but it's still elevated compared to where you were when you had lack of
mm,
sovereignty and lack of self-worth. I dealt with that. Do I charge 100,000 or do I charge 80,000? Well, if I charge 80,000, I'm not in my integrity anymore. Who am I lowering my prices
mm,
now? Well, actually, you're pulling people in at 80,000 and you're actually making money from it, and it's still way more than the $200 that you charged Angharad Sage for an hour with you 3 years
mm,
ago. You know what I mean? There's this
mm,
um, perfectionism that will even come up in my process. Like now, I have someone who works for me full time, who gets paid full time every week. I have three people on the side of that who do things because I my business is split into three parts. Every step of the way, every time I level up, it triggers something else. It triggers this new level. Oh, you've got $500,000 coming into the bank. Well, now there's this weird trauma that I never knew was there around possibly losing something that big. I'm like, oh
mm,
my gosh, every step of the
mm,
way, it's triggering us. So, when people have villainized me for it, I understand, but it was painful for me at one time of being
mm,
misunderstood until I really
mm,
locked in that identity of I am supposed to be the wicked witch that they project on. And many people, when they cast you as their villain, they become the superhero in their story. And because
mm,
they've been in victimhood their whole life, they need to become the superhero before they have the journey, where they go on the medicine journey and ayahuasca tells them, you projected a lot of shit onto Angharad back then, and they go, "Oh
Mm.
my gosh, I can't believe I did that, and I didn't realize I was doing it at the time." We have to let these natural
Yeah.
processes happen, and people like us need to not worry about that happening over there. We
Mm.
have our own processes going on. You all listening, who are starting businesses, who have a business that may be conscious, that may not be galactically coded, or shamanically involved the way our businesses are. Maybe you make you know children's clothes by hand. That's still a conscious business in my
Mm.
perspective. If you're working for yourself, if you're bringing in the money through your own talents and your own soul mission, just know that there when we get into this conversation, that's where the conversation of charging your worth and self-worth comes in, because I'm
Mm.
sure you didn't become a millionaire by charging $300 for an hour.
Mm.
You
Mm.
didn't charge me $3 or $300 for an hour. Okay.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and it was exciting to me when you said, "Here's the link, book now."
Yeah.
And I did immediately, because I thought, I want to be the type of client that I want to attract. I also thought, well, maybe this is how maybe if you invest in this big way and scare yourself, maybe that's how you stretch, like they say. And I guess
Mm.
I just brought her into my life to do this for me. And so, yes, it triggered me, but I didn't project anything onto you. I didn't
Mm.
see you as the forcing me to do that. I had to sit with my own process. As a healer, I was already used to reflecting and looking at myself, and really, you know, really one of my Chiron conjunct the ascendant wounds is always, well, it's got to be my fault. It's not Inherit's fault. It's more my fault. Where there was an imbalance there that it even revealed, where I was beating myself
Mm.
up for booking a session with you and for not being able to afford food now, which literally lasted a couple weeks, because
Mm.
of just spirit needed me to go through this. there's there is somebody who's going to give you food. There's somebody who's going to help you out during this time. And also, we need you to lose it all so that you can understand that you're never going to be homeless again. You're never going to be struggling again. Even if you get all the way down to rock bottom in the false matrix, you're not actually. That means you're about to shoot up because you've mastered this new code. And during, I was like, but what if it isn't that? What if it
Mm.
isn't that? And then it was. And then I was
Mm.
like, oh, Angharad Sage, Angharad Sage, Angharad Sage. But before that, I really questioned. And so, someone like you, your energy has this ability to hold a container that, for someone like myself, even, and my energy can hold a container in that way as well, where we're really activating people, and we're holding this sacred role, just like a shaman would, just like a heyoka, where you can project all your stuff onto me. You can think I'm the best thing in the whole world. You can fangirl over me, and then you can hate me for several months.
Mm.
You can go through that whole process, but you are going to step up into your soul mission, and you are going to reclaim your sovereignty and your worth. And I don't have
Mm.
any choice around that, because it's why I came here.
Mm. I want to share. So I don't have a defined ego in my chart, and you do.
I
And the
definitely
way
do.
you, yeah, and the way you describe the experience of being a leader and being projected on the challenges you go through is fucking powerful and so beautiful, because it is so centered around your individuality and your ego, and not in a bad, like, ego is,
No,
it's
yeah.
used as such a bad fucking word, but
Well, and I would
it's
love you to go
not,
into a
it's your
little bit more depth.
individualism.
I want you to go into a little bit more depth about that, because people listening who are not as familiar with human design may hear this whole ego manifestor, ego
Mm.
center, ego thing as a very
Mm.
selfish,
Mm.
inconsiderate type of energy, when we're
Right.
actually talking about the original heart.
Mm, we are. And people who say it's selfish and individual and full of ego are the undefined people absorbing your energy and amplifying it by 200% and going, oh my, and being triggered by that.
Yeah.
So I am absorbing your energy right now and your heart energy amplifying by 200%, and yet I'm not triggered by it. And the key is I release, but also the gift that I want to share about this is, for me as a leader, when I'm receiving other people's perspectives, or seeing different narratives in the world, or just, experience, even hearing your story about after you paid me and then couldn't buy food in the time that came afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't make that about me,
Yeah.
because it's not. like anyone's experience, like my prime example with I have two children, okay? They're 2 years apart and they get along so incredibly well. They are but like incredible. Just the best fucking the biggest gift, honestly, ever.
Yeah.
And they scrap sometimes, okay? And I'll walk in a room a few years ago and like Joe will be someone was about to hit someone and I'll be like, whoa, hold the fucking phone. Someone's about to hit someone. And I'll be like, the person say Joel's about to hit Clara. I'd be like, Joel, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you losing your like you cannot do that to your sister. But it's like they both have a story. And I know both of their characters so significantly that he would never just pick up something and just beat the shit out of his sister because that's not who he is. I know his character. And so, really, what has she done to piss him off to the level where he wants to do that or where he feels like he needs to do that to set a boundary? And then why did she do it so badly? What was her
Right.
reaction to underneath that? Why does she have to do something so fucking intense and threaten something so intense? What did he do? What did he violate to make her feel like that? And then what did she do that made him feel like I need to set a boundary? Like, and you replay and undo and unreverse it. And as a parent, I walk in and see someone about to hit someone. It's so easy to take the perspective of what the fuck is that last person doing? And they get all the blame.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, life is so complex. And in that one situation, someone could have been tired, someone could have been hungry, someone just smashed someone's favorite or ripped someone's favorite art drawing that they just did. And
Yeah.
then one child might have been feeling neglected, and one child maybe had a shit sleep. And one, you know what I mean? Like there are a million different moving parts to that one situation. And so anytime we are taking on somebody else's energy, and amplifying by 200% or hearing someone's story, hearing someone's feedback, or them saying you charge too much, there are a million moving pieces as to why that perspective is why that smack is about to happen in
Yeah.
that exact moment.
Yeah.
And so really it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about you. We have a role, we are part of the story, but actually it's not about my identity. It's not about my worth. It's not about my confidence. It's not about my work. It's not about my value. It's not about how I communicated. It's not about my character and who I am as a human and what my mission is and who I am here to serve and what I have built. It's not actually about any of that. And so when I receive or witness or see anything online or in person about my business or about me, it doesn't impact me, but it's not because I've said to myself, I'm not going to care.
Right.
Because that's the advice that I was told so many times. Oh, don't care about what someone else thinks.
Right.
That's what we're all told. But me trying to do, I tried to do that forever. And yet I became the biggest people pleaser that I fucking knew.
Right.
And ended up in a fucking cult, right? Being a
Yep.
serving wife who is not allowed no job of her own and no ambitions of her own and no perspectives of her own and no money of her own and not allowed to make a cake and make $50 herself. Like, what the fuck? Literally, like, really got in trouble for all this stuff. And now I know through actually knowing who I am that the others' perspectives do not impact me, but it's not because I just told myself I'm not going to care. It's because I grounded so deeply into who I am and trusting my own character and understanding myself and knowing what I'm absorbing and what I need to release within the mechanics of my human design and within my operating as a human, that when that stuff happens, it doesn't impact me because I know who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
when you,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and when you know who you are, whoever's listening, so deeply that anybody could say anything about you or about the work that you do or about the kind of mother that you are, like we have a lot of uh, tension, different perspectives, maybe not tension now, it's probably the incorrect word, but a lot of family believe that we should not be raising the children how we are, that we are really bad parents and we shouldn't be raising our children the way we do. And that doesn't impact me anymore like it did when it first started surfacing a few years ago.
Yeah.
But that's not because I decided not to care. It's not because I told myself I didn't care. It's because I became so solid in my authority, in myself, and my sovereignty. So when you become so fucking sovereign and so fucking clear and so literally full of yourself and the most grounded and clear way for you, that is when you can hold and understand other perspectives without making it about you. And
Yeah.
the saying that I say to my husband has helped me first in my relationship is he would hold space for me. And one of the things I would say to him is even when it's about you, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about my experience of you or something you said or something you did or didn't do. When you're holding space for me, I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to understand it. I don't need you to undo it. I don't need you to tell me you'll do better. I just need you to hold space for me as I figure out my side of the street and what I need to pull apart so that I can elevate in this situation, so I
Yeah.
can become more myself, so I can learn my lessons through it. And that's really what being a fucking human is, honestly. It's the complexities of relationships is like the backbone of everything, and the same thing happens with money. And so when we pull it all apart and look at and zoom in at different parts and let go of different parts and see the big picture and see the smaller picture, what I realized is that the journey of money is actually the thing that I enjoy. I enjoy the creation process. I enjoy the business process. I enjoy starting something from nothing. I enjoy
Yeah.
increasing prices. I enjoy creating a sale. I enjoy hiring a team member. I enjoy everything about business. And when I got to the point, it was my $2.4 million year, which was my first seven figure year, ended up being in $2.4 million. When I got there, I had like a bit of a death because I'm like, wait, who am I now? What do I even do?
Right.
What do I even do with this now?
Right.
What do I had so much to lose, like you described. And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm meant to do anymore because it happened so fucking like I went from multiple six figures to a multiple $1 million year the next year. And I wasn't, my human had to play a bit of fucking catch up with that. And
Yeah.
what I realized in the years to come, because that was in 2021, what I realized in the years to come is that in the next year, the 2022, is that it's actually the journey of the creating that I enjoy. It's the journey of having the squeezing point of being like, oh, actually, I want to learn how to renovate a fucking house with my own hands. I
Yeah.
want to challenge. I like challenges. And for me, I saw money as a challenge. And once I overcame that, I was like, well, what the fuck do I do now? I just created other challenges for myself.
Right.
And because I enjoy the building process. And so we project all of this stuff onto money. And then when we get there, of
I'm
course,
still
money.
here, by the way.
Okay. Do you want me to stop?
No.
Okay.
My camera's getting a little hot.
Oh, gosh. With all of the frequencies.
I
Um,
know it.
and so I don't even know what I was saying. When I got, I don't know, the building process. It was the building process I enjoyed. And so, oh, that's right. When we project all the things onto money and then we get it, of course, then we're going to go, oh wait, what's next? Oh wait, now what do I
Right.
do? Oh wait, what should I be doing now? Oh wait, oh maybe I was projecting all this stuff onto money to begin with. Maybe the journey, maybe the whole point was to learn to be in the present moment. Maybe the
Yeah.
whole point was to learn to fall in love with the journey of creating again and not quite having yet. But maybe the point was realizing that we are the resource
Yeah.
and we are resourceful as fuck. And we
Yes.
can actually create anything that our heart is like literally showing to us that we desire. And sometimes that is through triggers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the grounding of loving the journey and loving who we are and loving the not knowing yet and the not precipitated yet and the not understanding yet and the understanding and the precipitated all at once.
Yeah.
I think that's the journey. I think that's the joy.
Yeah. What's really coming up right now is as I was moving I live in California now and I'm moving to Mount Shasta here in the next couple of months. And so I moved thousands of miles away from where I was before in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was a huge move that I chose to make for my business. I moved to a Sun and Mercury line in astrocartography,
How
and
was that?
and
I want to know how that was.
it has been an incredible journey. It was very difficult at first in certain ways, but I definitely I can't. There were some energies around. I want to make sure to get on my sun line because I I want to be in the frequency of who I really am. I want to be in the frequency of the light. I want to be in the frequency of receiving more, being seen more, being
Mm,
seen, but also moving to your sun line is great for money and business success and that sort of thing. So also wanted to move here because Mount Shasta has been calling me, but also I made sure to get on my sun line because there was a little part of me that was like, I need to just make sure that we keep making this money because now I've got people to
mm,
pay. I've got, I've
yeah.
always wanted to move out to California. It wasn't only for that reason, but I found myself being very anal about it and
Mm,
being like, we have to be on the line because I want to make sure I get the most out of that energy. And I also want to speak to the astrocartography experience from a
mm,
new perspective because when I moved to Chicago, lived in Louisville, where I was born and raised, and lived in Atlanta, all three of them are on my Chiron and ascendant line. And so I was like,
mm,
I'm done being this triggerer for everyone in this way. I'm
mm,
ready to go be on my sun line and really just be seen and live in the warmth and live in the success that I know is worthy of me. And it it has been really incredible, and my business has split into three parts. And so there's this major expansion that is basically several years in the works. And your human can just feel like, when is it going to when is it going to just open? When are the shops going to open? When is the clientele going to be built up? And when is it going to be a machine that just runs itself? Like, when is
mm,
that going to happen? But I have loved every step of it. I love building the websites and doing all of these things and creating these different offers. And I'm speaking to all of our ascended CEOs and spiritual entrepreneurs out here that, designing these programs and creating these courses and doing all this is like, I have a program in me that if you have a lot of money, you don't need to do anything. So I
mm,
am now in my process. I'm being very vulnerable with you and the entire world that the next level of my expansion is the fact that I have this fear that when I have millions of dollars that I will give up my soul mission. I won't want to do anything. I will just bake sourdough bread and
yeah.
go dirt bike riding, and I won't do the thing that I'm supposed to do, which sounds ridiculous when I'm saying it out loud, but it's
I
a
get you.
cord of energy that's within me. And as I
Mm,
was moving out here, my dad, who he was my main abuser as a child. Well, through my healing journey, I've healed so much of that, and he has become different because I've tapped into a whole different timeline where he's just slightly different. And he was supporting me and telling me, you know what, I'm because my mom called me and said, you can't move to California. And I said, why not? She said, well, everything's so expensive out there.
mm,
And I said, Mom, what if I can afford it? Well, I think that's great. And that's all she could say to that. But when I talked to my dad was like, shoo wee, I don't know if I would pay for that. He was going on his rants. And then he said, but you know what? You need to just go do it. You're going to be fine. You've always been fine. And then he said to me, and don't worry about the money. Or he said, when it comes to the money, you're always going to worry about money. It doesn't matter if you've got millions of dollars or no money in the bank, you're always going to worry about money. And I remember thinking to myself, that does not have to be my reality. That right there, I know what he meant, and he meant it with love.
mm,
But hold on a second. You've never
mm,
had millions of dollars in the bank, so how do you know about not worrying about money? Is what I thought
mm,
to myself. But he activated something within me that had been living in there that I've now been purging out of my system, which is it doesn't matter. You're always going to worry about money. And so now I'm sitting in a portal right now around constantly, like sometimes waking up and having these intense fears about like losing money, not being able to pay this person full time because she's only been working for me for a year full time. It's not like this has been 10 years of this, but I'm
mm,
I'm so proud of myself that I am living in a time that the world is calling a recession, and it's such a hard time to be alive right now economically. And I live in a beautiful home in California, and have a full-time assistant and a team and all of these beautiful websites, and all of this knowledge, all of these star beings flying around in the sky connecting with me. My life is overflowing, but yet I wake up in the morning sometimes worried about money, and then have to go do some breath work and clear it, because I'm like, this is just old, and it has to be coming up. And this is for everyone listening. It has to be coming up because I'm on the precipice of something.
Mm.
It has to be, because I am choosing not to worry about it. And after I'm done doing the breath work, or sometimes after I get up and I go, not today, Saturn, I
Mm-hmm.
literally, it just goes away.
Mm.
It's like the old part of me being like, wait a minute, who are you going to be when you're not worrying about money? Because worrying about money is what drove me from the time I was 15 years old until my Saturn return.
Mm.
And even beyond that, because after my Saturn return, I decided to become a full time healer and astrologer and shamanic healer and medium. And those are supposed to be jobs that, like a school teacher in America, if you want to make lots of money, you don't become a shamanic healer or a medium, because you're supposed to be poor doing that, because
Yeah.
that is the narrative. So I have absorbed all of that and then had to release it. And then when I released it and stepped up into a different level of power, or placed myself in a different sacred worth portal, people then started to project things, and then I absorbed it with my 12th house energy and all my Cancer rising and all that, and then I had to release it again. So it's been quite a process, and I want everyone to hear where I'm at now. There was definitely a lot of hard work, but actually there was also just sometimes when someone just ran like, hey, I want to take your medicine program, $50,000 right there. Hey, I want to take your program, $30,000. I raised my prices. I did the things that Angharad told me to do, that were in some cases just kind of ridiculous to my parents or to people I used to work with, right? And so you could say I worked hard for it maybe, but I worked hard just to get into the arena of receiving it effortlessly.
Mm.
Okay. So I didn't work hard for the money. I did work
Mm.
hard for the worth. I will tell you that, because
Mm.
energetically, we live in a false matrix that's super dense. So it wouldn't be hard if it wasn't dense. And
Mm-hmm.
so, us elevating and ascending in this process, you've got lots of light workers and spiritual practitioners who would look at us as full of shit, and we only care about the money. And I'm like, this is the one thing that everyone needs based on this ridiculous law of the false matrix. Shouldn't we start with their foundation, which is money, and heal them from there? Because I noticed in Herod, people would come to my shamanic retreats and then my medicine retreats and heal multidimensional trauma and womb trauma, and just level up in such beautiful ways. And then they would go home and go to their job, or they would go home and start worrying about money. And it was as if it undid all of that. It didn't undo it on a DNA level, but to their ego and to their psyche, because they
Mm.
went home and then had to struggle with money again, they couldn't continue leveling up, or at least they believed that. Okay. That
Mm.
density was there. What do you have to say about that?
I think that um, all of us have experienced some version of that, right? Whatever version. But a lot of us have been taught, and one of the matrices, or part of the matrix, is to surrender our peace for money, is to surrender our time with our children for money, is to choose a husband who has a lot of financial resources rather than love. There is so much
Right.
programming around what we have to give up in order to have money. And this, once again, is one of those moments where if you have no role models, if neither of us feel like the right authentic match for you, that's completely fucking fine. There is no problem with that. But if you are feeling the wall and you don't have a role model that has precipitated something in a similar kind of way as to how you want to embody wealth or money, or having money in your bank account, or having security, whatever security is to you, look beyond the binary wall, look inside yourself, create something that you wish that you had, be the leader that you wish that you had. Like, go through the wall, climb over the wall, elevate through the wall. Know that the wall is not the only thing. It is the world, yes, and we are playing with it, but it's not the only tool in our toolbox. It is not the only experience that's available to us on this earth.
Yeah.
And like, when you're speaking about the fear that is coming up, like around money, and like doing the breath work in the mornings about losing stuff and having the responsibilities of team members, and and stuff from like your family lineage, like this is reminding me so much of my journey right now with my body and my body trauma.
Mm.
I have had many sexual assaults in my life, and this year I started seeing a psychologist
Yeah.
because I've realized how much of a barrier it has been for me as I go to lose weight. It is trauma. Like, I am getting there. I have come so fucking far this year. It's unbelievable. And the
Yeah.
years before, because there's a lot of pre-work. But like 6 months ago, I couldn't, or maybe 2 years ago, I couldn't exercise because I was so afraid of people seeing me. And I
Yeah.
was so afraid of being attractive, physically attractive to people, like, because of the sexual assaults that I've had. And
Yeah.
one of the exercises that I did with my psychologist recently was around, I can't remember what her name was for it. It was something cool, but I, undefined head center, have fucking forgotten what it was. But I remember after the exercise being like, oh, and it was something from my childhood about when I put on a short dress, and something I found in the wardrobe and one of my parents' reactions. And it was so triggering to me before we did this exercise. And afterwards, I remember, because we did it kind of like an inner child kind of version, different than what I had experienced before. But anyway, and I remember realizing, oh, the healing through this is not undoing it, and also not saying the fear isn't real, because the fear is fucking real.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking real that if I exercise and if I'm attractive, I'm going to get sexually assaulted, because I have been sexually assaulted whilst out exercising. Like,
Wow.
this is fucking real for me, like really fucking real. And this was only like 4 years ago. Like, it wasn't even that fucking long ago. Like, and through that exercise, what I realized was wisdom is not something from a book, and wisdom does not negate fear, but wisdom helps us hold the experience of fear.
Yeah.
And wisdom comes through a lived experience, right? It does. There's wisdom. There is no shortcut to wisdom. There is no shortcut at all.
Right.
Wisdom, a wise woman rocking, a sage rocking on her chair in a porch, on her rocking chair with her fucking pink lemonade in her hand, having a cigarette, whatever the fuck she's doing, right?
Yeah.
That boss,
Yeah.
that bitch, like, she she didn't get there because she sat on that porch her whole life. She got there because she went through fucking horrible shit. She went through difficult stuff, and she came out the other side.
Yeah.
And so really the fear that we experience isn't to be bypassed. It's actually to be so fucking present with it, and to draw on areas of wisdom and spaces and people that can support us in these times, like whatever it looks like for us. And for me, like, seeking the mentors, the psychologists, the support people, like paying people has been the cleanest exchange for me of support. Has it been without trauma? Fuck no. Definitely not. Of course things happened, but for me, the involvement of money, of paying and investing in myself with my money to get support, offers a completely different realm, a completely different paradigm of support and of perspectives that I would otherwise have not have had access to.
Right.
Because, like, I had a dream last night about, do you know who Stephen Bartlett is?
Mm-mm.
Might not be, like, Capricorn, right? A business shit. He's got a podcast. I don't know. It's a business podcast. Love his shit. It's called Diary CEO. Love his fucking podcast. He interviews the coolest people, like neuroscientists and like very masculine
Yeah.
type,
Yeah.
not just business, but like he is a businessman. Anyway, he invests in companies and, well, like just boring Capricorn
Yes.
shit
Very
that I
Capricorn. Yes.
listen to all the time. Anyway, I had a dream about him and about how I was supporting him through something and it was about people projecting onto him last night. And one of the things that came through that actually, well, I don't need to go read my notes. One of the things that came through from that exchange and that I wrote down the next morning is that people simply will not understand a perspective until they have been through it themselves.
Right. Wow.
It does not matter how much of a front set you had with somebody as they were making wealth from nothing, unless you have done it yourself, you are never going to understand.
Yeah.
You are never going to understand what it's like to make content online about money when your in laws think you are the literal fucking devil for charging anything for your spiritual gifts, let alone
Right.
tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
Like my in-laws will not even $20 for healing would have been completely you're going to hell, is completely you are going to hell. So it's like, but I will never be understood by them.
Yeah.
And so can you handle not being understood by somebody, not getting their validation? This is the reason why inner validation is so fucking important, because nothing else actually fucking matters. You can create whatever the fuck you want. You
Yeah.
can charge for whatever the fuck you want. You can do whatever the fuck you want with your free time. You can be a billionaire who does nothing for themselves, who has someone dress them every morning,
Yeah.
picks out their outfit, only wears, I don't know, Bulgari fucking undies. Is that even a clothing brand? I don't even know. Like who gets their nails done every fucking day, who has
Yeah.
people feed them grapes, who has people arrange their travel holiday for them, nannies who look after the children and teach them Spanish and all this kind of shit. Or you could be a billionaire who drives a Honda Civic and no one would ever fucking know is a billionaire.
Right.
And you could
They
be anywhere in
exist.
between.
We're
Yeah,
not
and you could
models.
be
We're not modeled these things. When we think of a billionaire, we think of, you know, Bill Gates and what's that clown's name?
Trump. No.
Elon Musk. Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
And people like that, Donald
Yeah.
Trump and all this, but we're not modeled these different ways that
Mm,
you can hold wealth and,
mm,
be sovereign in the world and, you know, um, like how you can ride dirt bikes and bake your bread and not be living in some huge mansion
mm.
that you don't really care about. If you
No,
really cared about it, some people really want that, then have that. But, I've
absolutely.
noticed in my journey, I want to go on elaborate trips to Bali and Egypt. I don't want a Mercedes. Like it's just I
Mm,
don't want a Louis Vuitton wallet. I don't want those
mhm,
things that kind of stuff I don't give a shit about.
mm,
I give a shit about opening $1 million retreat center, around
mm,
having an infrared sauna and colon hydrotherapy clinic inside of the retreat center and paying healers what they're
mm,
worth. And I
mm,
want to create and give back to the animals. And I want to give back to the ayahuasca foundation and actually
mm,
create a big impact. Us manifestors, we want to have a big impact in the world. So yes, I do want it for myself and I do want it for other people in the world around me. But even regardless, the universe doesn't judge us for how greedy or how selfish we all claim something is. The universe
mm,
isn't judging us. We are the universe. So
mm,
there's no God saying you can't have the money because you're going to do something bad with it. What is bad? What is good? So
mm,
this conversation is opening a lot for people. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable because who would have thought this multimillionaire badass galactic Capricorn queen has sexual trauma and body issues, which actually could be keeping her from her $50 million mark one day,
mm,
right?
mm,
So maybe actually your process is just pulling you into a deeper level of embodiment, and you're going to go from 10 million to 50 million, and
mm,
that is a message from spirit, by the way.
mm,
Okay, but also, who would have thought this person who makes multiple six figures a year and is able to do all of this full time and afford a nice camera and afford a full time assistant? Who would have thought that he also has ancestral trauma around money that is coming up because now he's about to make more of it? We are
yeah,
not gurus, we are just initiators and the leader. We're the first one walking into the haunted house.
yeah,
We're the one getting the cobwebs in our face,
yeah,
and so that you don't have to walk through them. And I want people to
mm,
hear that we're not here to be some type of ascended master that you worship, we're here to let you know that it's possible and that you're worthy of it. So
Mm,
before we end this conversation, because I'm going to have you back on for a part two, because there's several things that I wanted to go deeper into. You back in December and January entered the threshold where you exited the 10th house year. We always have this conversation as we get older, but you
mm,
are now in your 11th house year. And so 2024 was your 10th house year. It was your Capricorn 10th house Saturn year. And now you're in your 11th house year, and I'm about to enter it in 2 weeks, which 34 is the beginning of the 11th house year. And so the 11th house is big Aquarius energy. It's community, it's opening up to different
mm,
possibilities, it's the future technology. It's also sudden changes, new erratic, maybe new branding that comes in out of nowhere that
mm,
is sort of rebellious and
mm,
bold, very Aquarian. So I want
mm,
you to talk about, your 11th house year so far. What has changed for you in the past 6 months, and
mm,
where angharad.sage.com and this brand is now?
mm. Well, you identified the pink being with me at the beginning of this call. I just rebranded into uh, pink and orange and red vibes. Very bold, very different compared to what I'd been drawn to for a really long time.
Yeah, which was
But it's,
soft, floral, pastel,
yeah,
kind of
like,
grainy photos. And
yeah, like
yeah,
very, like, hate to say it, but like white vanilla luxe
it
white
was.
bitch.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like just, and that's fine. Once again, not from a judgmental place. Like I'm still really like I fucking love it. Like I love organic model. That's really
Totally.
my like it feels really nurturing and really safe and really beautiful for me. But I guess I'm just entering into an era where just it's like a lot of unapologetic kind of
Yes,
vibes
I can
again
feel it.
this
I'm
year.
reflecting back to you. The
Yeah,
feeling is coming off like I'm ready to go even deeper into
yeah,
an authenticity and into a
yeah.
boldness.
Yeah, and like into there was a lot of shadows, as you know, even just from the sexual assault
Yeah.
perspective and the body stuff that I've healed over the past couple of years within my body. And now I'm like not letting the camera pan past me. I'm like, no, 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 wait, stop right there. This is where the camera is going to land.
Yeah.
Like that's very much where it's the energy and with the embodiment of, healing my version of stuff that happened with clients a few years ago, or stuff that happened,
Yeah.
messages that I received, even like, and I think that life provides us opportunities for us to like prove to ourselves how much we have healed. When I started talking about sexual assault and weight loss on my Instagram stories, I had some horrible fucking
I
messages
know.
about,
I know. I saw.
and it's like, but I went through that and it literally did not affect me.
Wow.
It did not
Very good.
change me. It did not trigger me. It did not hurt me. And that to me is like oh, I am ready now. I am ready for the visibility now. I'm ready to be seen now in all of these layers that I have figured the fuck out.
Yeah.
There are so many things that have happened behind the scenes in the last couple of years that I had not shared because I didn't want to. My throat did not want to speak. It was not the time to speak about it because for me, I like to be really embodied in what I'm speaking about because I am very conscious and aware as to how words affect people, being a manifester, but also that I had received so many words over my lifetime that fucking hurt me. So I'm
Yeah.
very conscious and aware as to how I put my activation out there into the world. And part of that also requires me to hold the space and hold the frequency and hold the power and be like, no, 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 the camera's stopping right here. It's not going to go past anymore.
Yeah.
This the attention needs to draw and the funnel needs to come in. And I feel really ready for that now. That's what I'm sensing and that's what I'm feeling for my 11th house here. Not that I'm an astrology expert like you, but that's what I'm sensing.
Yeah. And so, um, where can people find you to work with you, and what are you offering now?
Mm. That's probably going to change over the next year, I would imagine. It's been very chill over the past couple of years. Uh, so that might change. It also might not. Who the fuck knows? I really like spending a lot of time with my family. So, a lot of my work and my revenue and a lot of my new clients over the past few years has been through my self-paced offers, which you can go to just angharad.sage.com. It has everything there, or angharad.sage.com/links, and it has all my like hot links. oopsies. I open up a mastermind every year towards the end of the year for the year ahead. So I normally open that up the last quarter of the year for the following year. So I have a few clients in there, and I have a private mentorship that I have been taking clients on the whole time for. So I have intensives. I have 1 to 3 month packages for new clients. Other clients who've worked with me before can sign on for longer. But yeah, those are, and just social media. So I have a podcast that's in the process of being rebranded. Um, and it's called Your Galactic Guide. It's still going to be called that, but
Yeah.
there's new things coming there later this year. And yeah, just socials and websites,
Yeah.
which we'll have
Well,
all linked.
thank you so much for being here and being so vulnerable and sharing your process and your activations and your wisdom with my audience and with myself. And it is always a pleasure to play in your energy and for us to play together and really keep supporting each other on this manifestor, galactic,
Mm.
star seed, multidimensional business mentor money master journey that we're on. And so I appreciate your initiation and activation several years ago and your continued support and your presence in my life. And if you want to work with Angharad Sage, please go to angharadsage.com. You can follow her on Instagram. It's Angharad Sage, just all one word. And of course on YouTube and Facebook as well. But the Facebook, if you're going to type that in, has 2 E's in it, just because that tripped me up when I was looking it up. So make sure that you go and check her out now. And Angharad Sage, is there anything else that you want to share with us before we go?
I actually want to honor you, Chris, for your clear channel and your frequency. And the reason why, which I have shared in a different podcast episode with you, but other people haven't listened, the reason why I booked under an alias name, which you kind of alluded to in the beginning when you're describing our first meeting, I found him on TikTok and booked under an alias name. I think I booked it under Anne and my maiden name, so you couldn't find me. No one, and you didn't know anything about me. And for me, like within the first couple of minutes, I knew how clear your channel was and how um, deeply activating it was and is. And it's rare, honestly, it is. And for me, who really values clear and clean and activating portals, it is really, really beautiful to know someone like you. And so I just want to honor you and thank you for the impact that you have in the world and you've had for me, and that I know you're going to continue to have.
Well, I received that fully and I appreciate that. And it means so much coming from a fellow manifester queen and someone who really has the eyes to see those things. And so I really appreciate you for saying that. And I receive those flowers. Okay. I don't have a man to go dirt bike riding on. So sometimes I need my my soul sisters and my soul family to remind me sometimes that it's all worth it and that what I came here to do, I'm doing. So thank you so much. And thank you all so much for witnessing our process and joining us for another episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. We'll see you next time.